the author said that this book has old school paranormal vibes like Twilight and the Vampire Diaries, and something I did notice was that this book, it starts with a prologue, and for whatever reason, the prologue just made me think of the prologue from Twilight. Join me in today's video for a cozy reading vlog of the YA fantasy book The Temptation of Magic by Megan Scott. So at the end of chapter 1, there's the title drop of the book. So the last line of the chapter reads, "To these artists," Westmore continued, "the temptation of magic was too strong to ignore." Hi, so I'm here with a reading update. I have made it to chapter 6, page 54. So let me tell you a little bit about what this book is about, and then I will give my first thoughts. So this story takes place in a world where supernatural creatures live in secret among humans. And our main female character, Nicole, is one of those supernatural creatures, and she is the deadliest supernatural creature of all. She is an Imperial. Imperials are immortal, and they have the power to shapeshift into any supernatural creature, and in the process, they also gain the powers and abilities of that creature that they shapeshift into. And Nicole's mother was also an Imperial, but when Nicole was 3 years old, her mother was killed. So because of this, Nicole and her family live quiet lives in a town that is mostly populated by humans, and Nicole resists her Imperial nature. And her mother was killed by the supernatural government called the Wake, and the Wake ends up forcing all Imperials to join their organization. And if an Imperial doesn't join their organization, then they are killed. And Nicole's mother refused to join, so that's why they killed her. You get the sense from the beginning of the book that the Wake has too much power and that they are corrupt. And Nicole's mother, when she died, she left a secret message behind, hidden within supernatural artwork. So Nicole has been trying to figure out this message because she believes that is the key to taking down the Wake and ensuring that her family is able to live a life of peace and safety. And in addition to Nicole, we have a second main character named Cayenne, because this book is dual perspectives, and so we get introduced to Cayenne in chapter 2. And Cayenne works for the Wake. And Cayenne has worked for this organization ever since something happened that resulted in his mother's death. So working for the Wake results in him getting assignments where he has to hunt down rogue supernatural creatures. And so he gets his next assignment, and it just so happens to be in the town where Nicole lives. And so that is where I'm at in the story so far. Now for my thoughts. So far I'm enjoying this. Right from the beginning, one of the things I'm really liking about this book is the atmosphere and vibes. So right from the very beginning of the book, you get fall vibes. So this book takes place at the beginning of September, and one of these settings is a university. And when I think about fall, I always think about college and school. And just the way that this college town is described, it gave me fall and academic vibes. Another thing I want to mention is that the author said that this book has old school paranormal vibes like Twilight and the Vampire Diaries. And something I did notice was that this book, it starts with a prologue, and for whatever reason, the prologue just made me think of the prologue from Twilight. And so I have Twilight right here. And I'm just going to read the first line of this, and then read a few lines from here so you can see what I mean. So the first line in the prologue in Twilight reads, "I'd never given much thought to how I would die, though I'd had reason enough in the last few months. But even if I had, I would not have imagined it like this." And so I'm going to read the first few lines of the prologue in here and the last few lines. First few lines of the prologue in A Temptation of Magic read, "When I was a girl, my mother tried to explain how vicious I'd become. I was only 3 years old at the time, so didn't yet understand the depth and darkness of my immortal urges, but my mother knew, and she warned me." And then the last few lines of the prologue read, After that night, I hoped to never discover the breadth of my metamorphic nature, yet wished, with a desperation born of grief and curiosity, that one day I would. I didn't know which would be worse. Now I do. And maybe it's just me, but I feel like the prologues in these two have similar vibes. And so I thought that was just really cool. So those are all my thoughts at the moment. I'm not super far in, but I am enjoying it so far. And now I am going to take a reading break because I want to do some baking. And I want to bake a fall themed treat. So I'm going to make sandwich cookies that are shaped like leaves and that are filled with maple cream filling because I have been wanting to make these cookies for a long time now. And I feel like I'm always drawn in by maple flavored desserts, but I feel like they never live up to my expectations. So I'm hoping that these cookies will be everything that I have dreamed of. But I'm going to go bake these cookies and I will report back and let you know if they live up to my hopes and dreams. And I'll also be back once I've read some more and had some more thoughts. Hi, so I am back with a reading update. It is now Wednesday, September 11th, and I have made it to chapter 24, page 214. So I am almost halfway through this book. Not quite yet, but almost there. And so I have more thoughts. And first, I just have to say that I am loving this. And I don't know if I'm going to jinx myself by saying this, but I feel like this is going to be a 5-star read. Like, it's already giving me that 5-star feeling. And I think one of the reasons that I am loving this is just the overall atmosphere of this book. I'm just loving how it's like whimsical and magical and also has like academia vibes as well. And I think this book is perfect for fall time and spooky time. So like right now is like the perfect time to read it. And I would say that so far this book feels like a mix between Twilight and Supernatural. So Twilight because the romance in here is really reminded me of the romance in Twilight. And so this isn't a vampire book, but it feels like a vampire book. But Cayenne and Nicole, they're Imperial, so they're not vampires, but what they are feels a little bit like a vampire. Because Cayenne talks about at one point how Nicole's scent is very overpowering and very alluring to him. And that, first of all, that reminded me of Twilight for obvious reasons. And also, like, it's a forbidden love between the two of them. They're drawn to each other, but they're fighting their attraction because they know it's not a good thing. But they still keep hanging around each other because they realize that they can help each other get what they both want. And so when they're around each other, like, there's just so much tension and angst, and I just really love that. And then this book is reminding me of Supernatural because Cayenne is in this town trying to hunt down another Supernatural. And Cayenne started hunting Supernaturals after his mother had passed away. So that kind of reminded me of how in Supernatural, Sam and Dean's father starts hunting Supernaturals because of the death of their mother. And now that I have read more, I am really liking Cayenne and Nicole as characters. So Cayenne is very much that tortured soul kind of character who has some self-loathing, and tortured soul characters are personally one of my favorite types of characters. And also because his mother died and he couldn't do anything about it, now he has this thing where he must save as many people as he can. And Nicole, I really like her as a character, and I especially really like how protective she is towards her family and how she'll do anything to keep them safe. And another thing I'm really loving about this book is Nicole's family. I just love their whole dynamic, and I love how close they all are to each other and how they all do anything for each other. And I just love the scenes in here where they're all like working together and helping each other. It's just so heartwarming. And I really hope that nothing bad happens to any of them, because I will be really upset. And we've also gotten some more information about Nicole's mother, and her and Cayenne might be linked in some way. So that's very intriguing, and I want to know more about that. So yeah, those are all my thoughts right now. I am loving this, and hopefully I continue to love this. And this is kind of making me want to rewatch the first Twilight movie, so I might end up doing that, but probably not today because my apartment is a disaster, so I really need to clean today. But maybe tomorrow morning I'll try to watch it before work. And I also have like a fun little arts and craft too that I could do while I watch that. So that might be what you see next in the video, is clips of that if I end up doing that. Hi, so I am here with an update. It's been about a week since my last update, and I am filming this at nighttime, which I don't usually do, so I do apologize if the lighting isn't very good. So, like I said, last update for this was about a week ago, because when I first started this video, I had a few days off from work, but then I went back to work, and then I didn't read for 5 days. But I picked this back up again yesterday, and I read like a large chunk of it. So now I only have about 100 pages left in here, and so I wanted to give some more thoughts about this before I finish it. So I am still absolutely loving this book. I am loving the forbidden romance that has been starting to heat up in here. I'm just loving the tension, the yearning, and the angst between Cayenne and Nicole. It's just like so good. It's like everything I want in a forbidden romance. Also, this book continues to give the Twilight vibes, which that's just like making me enjoy this book even more. I'm just finding it so much fun just seeing like some similarities to Twilight and seeing how Twilight obviously influenced this. And actually on page 289, this book actually name drops Twilight, and it mentions Edward Cullen by name. And so I'm just gonna read that line. There's no spoilers in this line, and it's out of context, so you probably won't even know what I'm talking about. But I'm gonna read it because when I read it, it just like made me so giddy, and I had to talk about it. So on page 289, Nicole says to Cayenne, "Can't you just drink from an animal like Edward Cullen?" And reading that, I was just like, oh my gosh, like I've been getting these Twilight vibes throughout the whole book, and now like they're actually mentioning Twilight, and it just made me giddy. And then after that mention of Twilight and Edward Cullen, there was a passage on 289 that also just gave me all the Twilight vibes, and it reminded me of like a very certain scene from Twilight. And maybe I'm reading too much into this, but it really gave me like the vibes from that scene. And so I am going to read that little passage. Again, there's not any like spoilers in this passage. And if you have read Twilight, you can tell me if it gives you the same vibes or if I'm just looking too much into this. So the passage reads, Nicole tried to tell herself she felt nothing, but she felt two things with startling clarity as her hand carefully linked with his. Pain from her not healing wound, which was its own kind of deeply unnerving, and affection. That was the only word she'd allow herself. Affection and an intense, aching lust for an imperial. So that's the passage that gave me Twilight vibes. So the passage in Twilight that it really reminded me of was this one that's right on the back of the Twilight book that I have. And it's the one that reads, about 3 things I was absolutely positive. First, Edward was a vampire. Second, there was a part of him, and I didn't know how dominant that part might be, that thirsted for my blood. And third, I was unconditionally and irrevocably in love with him. And so I'm just loving all the little nods towards Twilight in this book, and it's just like making it such a fun read. And even though like this is giving me a lot of Twilight vibes, it is very much its own thing still. It's not just like a copy of Twilight. And the thing is, like, I was a big Twilight fan when I was a teenager, but I did try to reread it back in 2020, and it just didn't hold up for me. I think because I'm an adult now, so I see, like, everything that is wrong with it, and also I just can't relate to Bella as much. She very much annoyed me when I was doing my reread back in 2020. So that being said, I feel like if you were, like, a very big fan of Twilight when you were a teenager, like I was, then you might really enjoy this one. That being said, I did rewatch the Twilight movie for the first time in a while yesterday morning, and that movie still holds up for me. And rewatching it yesterday morning, it just like made me so giddy and just like happy. It's just a fun movie, and I just have a good time when I'm watching the Twilight movies. And I feel like the first Twilight movie in particular, like, it gives me fall vibes, which is weird because it takes place in March. So it's actually taking place, like, the end of winter and the beginning of spring. But just, like, something about it, how, like, it's raining and you have supernatural things going on. And the movie with, like, that blue tint that's in the first movie, it just gives me fall vibes. And it felt like fall when I was watching it yesterday with all my curtains closed. So I was just, like, in my apartment watching it. And it was just a good time. And then while I was watching the movie, I did make a little bookmark. So I did this diamond painting bookmark, which I showed in some B-roll. And I bought these off of Amazon. I'll link them down below if you're interested. 2 others also came in the set that I'm going to do at some point. But I realized I don't really have like any fall or Halloween themed bookmarks. So I wanted to get some. So I decided to do these. So yeah, those are all my thoughts at the moment. I am now gonna go finish this book because my husband is at his band practice tonight. So I am home alone and I have some time to just do some reading. So I'm gonna take advantage of that and finish this book. So I'll be back with another update once I finish this with my final thoughts. So this is a little different. So for this whole book, we've gotten Cayenne and Nicole's perspective, but now chapter 50 is Ronan's perspective, which is Nicole's father. So I haven't mentioned this yet, but Nicole has a younger sister who's named Bells, and we just found out that her full name is Isabella. And she is a seer, so she sees visions of the future. And so that in her name, just more Twilight vibes. Oh no. Hi, so it's a few days later and I have finished The Temptation of Magic, so I am back with my final thoughts, and I absolutely love this book. 5 stars all the way, beyond 5 stars for this book. And this is now my new favorite book of the year. So since March, my favorite book of the year has been Where the Dark Stands Still, which I highly recommend this one as well, especially if you're a fan of Howl's Moving Castle. But now this one has taken the top spot and is now my favorite book of the year. I absolutely love the setting of a small, cozy college town at the beginning of September, so those fall vibes are definitely there. You get the mention of the weather becoming cooler, and you get the mention of the leaves turning colors. So this is like the perfect book to read like at the end of summer and beginning of fall. And I love the supernatural elements in here. There were all different types of supernatural creatures in this book. There are some that I've heard of, and then also some that were just unique to this book. And then I absolutely love the romance in here. I love the forbidden romance. I love the tension, the yearning, the angst. It was perfect. And I loved our 2 main characters, Nicole and Cayenne. Cayenne definitely reminded me a little bit of Edward Cullen. He is like the tortured soul type of character where something happened in his past and he lost someone that was really important to him and blames himself for it. So because of that, he like guards his heart really closely and doesn't get close to people. And then Nicole, she is a strong character and she is definitely capable of taking care of herself, but also she has a fierce loyalty to her family that I just loved, and she'll do anything for her family and her friends. And speaking of her family, I love the close-knit relationship of Nicole and her family in this book. I loved every member of her family, her father, her brother, her sister. I thought all their characters were well developed. and I really hope we get to see more of them in the next book. And I especially have some questions about her father. There's some things about him that I need to know the answers to. And I also found all the little nods to Twilight in this to be really fun as well, and that just made me love this book even more. This is the first book in a trilogy, so while it didn't end off on a big cliffhanger, it did leave some loose ends. And we did get some answers to some questions, but also with those answers came more questions. So now our characters have more things that they need to figure out. So the ending of this definitely ended on a hopeful note, but there are still things that need to be done. And so while I was happy with how this ended, I still also very much want book 2 like right now. I definitely recommend this book, especially if you like books with supernatural elements, books with forbidden romance. If you are a fan of Twilight or the Vampire Diaries or Supernatural, then you should definitely check this out. And I also think that this is the perfect supernatural romance book for fall and spooky season. And let me know down below if you have read this book, what you thought of it. And thank you so much for watching, and until next time, bye!